Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. Welcome to this podcast. My name is Craig Trey. It's been for the beautiful swampy Memphis, South Florida. And today's date is Friday, May 17th, 2019. So let us begin. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Decided to do another show. Beautiful day in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm at Cafe Collective, located at 100 North Federal Highway, Sweet Seas Bar, in downtown Fort Lauderdale to be exact. Plus, it's right in the corner, actually, on Broadway Boulevard and Northeast 7th Avenue at the, I could say, the southwestern district of Victoria Park, where it begins. Yeah, so, it's going to mellowed out. Had a little ordeal trying to figure a few things out last night. But a little annoyed, but that's okay. It got through. I thank people for listening to that as well and should give me information. And I do appreciate it. In reference to HB5, which is the ballot bill. So, wrote to my governor, recommend him to veto it because it's non-conjunction with Article 1, Sections 1, 2, 5, and 10 of our Florida Constitution. And I was very disappointed with triple marker. He chose poorly by voting yes. And Gary Farmer voted nay. You know me, I was pretty critical of the man when it comes to firearms and so forth. However, I did thank him on that, to be fair. And so I did recommend Chip Lamarca to honor his oath of office to everyone, all the servants in the state of Florida, to honor the supreme law of the Sunshine State. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to talk about an article written by Captain Johnstone. This was shared on Activist Post. Talk about the great warmongering demigod himself, John Bolton. Israel's Uncle Tom, many people claim. I wouldn't be surprised. The rogue elements of the bunch. Because, like I said, not everyone in Israel is praising what's happening. So it says here, that time, John Bolton said it's good to lie about war. Of course. He is a great BS artist as usual, and they still want you to accept his rhetoric. So as it reads here, it's an opinion page, of course. Journalist Whitney Webb recently tweeted a 2010 video clip I've never seen before featuring U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton defending the use of deception in advancing military agendas, which highlights something we should all be paying attention to as Trump administration foreign policy becomes increasingly Boltonized. On the December 2010 episode of Fox News Freedom Watch, Bolton and show's host Andrew Napolitano were debating about recent WikiLeaks publications, and naturally the subject of government secrecy came up. Now, I want to make the case for secrecy in government when it comes to the conduct of national security affairs and possibly for deception. Where is that appropriate? Bolton said. You know, Churchill said during World War II, in wartime, truth is so important it should be surrounded by a bodyguard of lies. And of course, do you really believe that? Asked the incredulous Napolitano. Absolutely, John Bolton. You lie in order to preserve the truth. If I had to say something I knew was false to protect national security, I would do it, Bolton said. And there's a video on here. You can see this conniving, gyno-infested pig that he is. And I'm very polite in this ordeal. I will continue on here. I don't think we're often faced with that difficulty, but I would lie about where the D-Day invasion was going to take place to deceive the Germans. You better believe it, Bolton continues. And of course, why do people in government think the laws of society or the rules don't apply to them? Napolitano asked. Because they are not dealing in civil society we live in under the Constitution, Bolton replied. They are dealing in an anarchic environment intentionally where different rules apply. He sounds like very Orwellian, or very like probably his favorite book is The Might is Right. How this sleazebag exhibits. And so, well, you took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and the Constitution mandates certain openness and certain fairness. Napolitano protested. You're willing to do away with that in order to attain a temporary military goal? I think that, as Justin Jackson said in the famous decision, the Constitution is not a suicide pact, Bolton said. I think defending the United States from foreign threats does require actions that, in a normal business environment in the United States, we would find unprofessional. I don't make any apology for it. Ain't that great? So we should all meet him and give him the Caesar salute and go, God bless the Empire, Adolf Hitler, zero Lord and Savior. To see how you react to that. He'll probably climax to the core, generally speaking, and get his clothes all liquefied. Alright, so we'll continue on here. So that's the thing, and it's important for us to know. That's the thing, because the way things are heating up in Iran right now, since Bolton's fingerprints are all over it. Bolton has been calling for war with Iran, and in a paid speech in July 2017 told his pro-regime change MEK terror cult audience that they would to be celebrating successful overthrow of the Iranian government together before 2019. Now we're seeing alarms being elevated and fear-mongering about Iranian missiles being circulated, with reports being leaked to the press of possible plans to send 120,000 U.S. troops to the region. How come we throw that old big for nothing wannabe tall man from Phantasma onto the front line of battle? Yes, Mr. Bolton. I can see how tough you really are. And of course, we got this one video here with the really lobbyists need a false flag to start a war. And I remember this video. I remember this clip years ago, and I did talk about this on my past episode. This is an environment that is ripe for deception of all sorts, and given what Bolton said on live TV nearly a decade ago, we would do very well to remain very, very skeptical of any and all news we hear about Iran going forward. If, for example, you hear that within this environment of escalated tensions and military posturing of Iran, or one of its proxies has attacked the United States in some way, your immediate response should be one of intense skepticism about what the mass media's talking heads are telling you to believe. Back in 2012, at a forum for the Washington Institute of Near East Policy think tank, the group's director of research, Patrick Clausen, openly talked about the possibility of using a false flag to provoke a war with Iran. I frankly think that this crisis initiation is really tough, and it's very hard for me to see how the United States president can get us to war with Iran, Clausen began. Can I just pause here to note what a bizarre series of words that is? Get us to a war with Iran? Get us to the thing that every sane human being wants to avoid, with every fiber for that being? You want to get us to there? This is not a kind of thing nor normal humans say. You can only hear this kind of insanity in the DC swamp, where creatures like John Bolton have their roots. Which leads me to conclude that if in fact compromise is not coming, that traditional way that America gets to war is what we do best for U.S. interests, Clausen added. Some people might think that Mr. Roosevelt wants to get into war. You may recall him, we had to wait for Pearl Harbor. Some people might think that Mr. Wilson wants us to get into World War I. You may recall we have to wait for the Louisiana episode. Some people might think that Mr. Johnson wants us to get us into Vietnam. You may recall we had to wait for the Gulf of Tonkin episode. We didn't go to war with Spain until the USS Maine exploded. And my point And I point out that Mr. Lincoln did not feel that he could call out the army until Fort Sumter was attacked, which is why he ordered the commander of Fort Sumter to do exactly the same, that thing which the South Carolinians said would cause an attack. That's from the video itself. So folks, check it out yourselves, man. So if, in fact, the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be the best if somebody else started the war clause and continue. One can combine other means of pressure with sanctions. I mentioned that explosion on August 17th. We would step up the pressure. I mean, look, people, Iranian submarines periodically go down. Someday, one of them might not come up. Who would know why? We can do a variety of things if we wish to increase the pressure. I am not advocating that, but I am suggesting that this is not an either-or proposition. Just sanctions have to succeed or other things. We are in the game of covert means against the Iranians. We could get nastier at that. And of course, there's a tweet here says, we know where your kids live. John Bolton threatened head of Chemical Weapons Commission as part of an effort launched against Iraq. That's April 2nd, 2008, by the way. So these are the ideas that have been in circulation for many years. That gun is loaded and ready to fire. Bolton trussed up his 2010 confession using an example that most people would agree with. This was a reasonable for Allied forces to deliberately deceive the Nazis about the nature of the D-Day invasion. But we know John Bolton is better than that by now. The PNAC director and architect of the Iraq War once threatened to murder a foreign official's children because his successful diplomatic efforts were putting a damper on the manufacturing of consent for the Iraq invasion. He wasn't defending the use of deception in crucial military options used to halt tyrants trying to take over the world. He was defending the use of deception in the senseless wars of aggression that he has built his political career on advancing. Take everything you hear about Iran with a planet-sized grain of salt, dear reader, and everything you hear about Venezuela too, while we're on the subject. They are skillful manipulators who are hell-bent on toppling the governments of those nations, and they have absolutely no problem whatsoever with deceiving you in order to facilitate that, and they don't believe the rules to apply them. And I have to agree with her completely. When John Bolton was hired to be a national security advisor, I was like, here comes the same old song and dance. The status quo continues. What would be next? Does John Bolton do a seance of the Zbigniew Brzezinski? What do I need to do, Zbigniew? Precisely. There's individuals like him makes Benedict Arnold a true patriot. Traitors? The one you hear on the one that's one of them that's in the cabinet right now. Yep, that's one traitor. There's many of them in there. Tyrannical parasites, due to their attributes. They want us to rule the world. They want to rule the world. Their way or the highway. Or listen to their masters. Their oligarchs. Or their PR managers. That's one thing about John Bolton. You gotta treat him like Hillary Clinton. Garbage. Contempt. One contemptuous thing they call a man. I'm not buying this whole thing with Iran. And I'm not praising their government either. Including Venezuela's as well. And I say that in good faith. Why? The foreign policies in the United States is unmeritable. Very deplorable. Apparently. valued. So what is your take on this, folks? You want us to go to war? I think everyone should call on John Bolton. Hey, you gotta go on the front line of battle, you wuss. Let's see how tough you are with that mustache of yours. Oh man, that's one blasphemous fool. I think I like to suggest all the brothers and sisters are serving. Give him the big middle finger. Give him the firearm. Go, okay, loudmouth, you go on the front line. I want to see how tough you are. I want to see the generals do that. They're not pro-imperialism. Throw him on the front line. Yeah. Bring Mike Pompeo as well. And Hillary Clinton too. Birds of the feather flock together, right? Absolutely. Hands off of an Iran. Period. Support a republic, folks. Never an empire. Alright. So, next one here. Let me see. Cool. Yeah, this next one here, folks, is from Jay Baker from the BobLivingstonLetter.com. And it's, of course, this week news that wasn't. And, of course, shooting down, deregulating, electioneering, carbonizing, and mailing in the gun grabbiest, the most fallacious, unsupportable, warmiest, and mentally deranged fakery in the week's fake news. And this is what he has to say. CNN claimed there have been 15 school shootings in the U.S. this year. Oh, really? Let's go see what it has to say here. When you see or hear words, school shooting, the scenarios that come up to mind involve the student or students bringing the weapons onto campus during school hours and shooting up classrooms, as the recent Colorado STEM school Highlands Ranch shootings, or a non-student person coming onto a campus during school hours with a deliberate intent to harm teachers and or students, as in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida. So when CNN reports that there have been 15 school shootings already this year, it sounds like we have a school shooting pandemic. Of course, that's exactly what CNN wants you to think. In this story, STEM school shooting, CNN established the following parameters for school shootings. It says here, the shooting must involve at least one person being shot, not including the shooter. The shooting must occur on school property, which includes but is not limited to buildings, athletic fields, parking lots, stadiums, and buses. We included accidental discharge of a firearm for as long as the first two parameters are met, except in instance where the sole shooter is law enforcement or security officer. We included injuries sustained from BB guns, since the Consumer Product Safety Commission has identified them as potentially lethal. So, right out of the gate, we see that CNN is dabbling in fake news. Well, let's look at each incident CNN lists and see what we can see. May 7th, Savannah State University, Savannah, Georgia. Dante Lamont Scott, who wasn't a student, has been charged with aggravated assault after he shot someone outside the student housing complex on campus. Details of the shooting of whether the victim was even a student haven't been released. So, not a school shooting. May 7th, STEM school Highland Ranch, Douglas County, Colorado. A mentally disturbed and drug-addled, legally and possibly illegal 18-year-old and mentally deranged transgender minor female allegedly pulled guns and killed 1 and injured 8. A real school shooting. May 4th, Eugene, Oregon. Alex Oyombe Graden, a student at Lane County College, was found shot dead in the parking lot behind a bar, so not a school shooting. April 30th, Charlotte, North Carolina. Former student Tyson Terrell is alleged for entering a classroom at UNC Charlotte and opened fire, killing 2 and injuring 4. That's a real school shooting. April 1st, Prescott, Arkansas. An 8th grade student smuggled a gun into school and shot another 8th grader in the hallway between classes at Prescott High School. A real school shooting, though no other students were targeted, so it was apparently a setting of a personal vendetta, or what I call thug life. March 27th, Holmes, Mississippi. A bus transporting elementary and middle school students from Holmes County was hit by gunfire and drive-by shooting that resulted in the injury of one student. The injured child was hit in the hand by a bullet. He was taken to a hospital for treatment and is expected to make a full recovery. The bus was miles from school when it was hit, not a school shooting. March 7th, Grambling, Louisiana. A negligent discharge at a Grambling State University dorm resulted in an injury of a student. The gun was owned by Taryn Abraham, a friend who identified the unidentified victim, who was a student at the university. Abraham was not a student and had run-ins with campus police before, including an arrest on weapons charges for having a weapon on campus. Both Abraham and the victim claimed the shooting was accidental. Surprisingly, the school's policy prohibiting guns on campus doesn't work on Abraham, not a school shooting. Another firearm-free zone, right? Oh, how dandy. February 26th, Montgomery, Alabama. A 17-year-old was shot in the arm while in the gym at Robert E. Lee High School in what authorities claim was not a random act. The shooter, whose name is known to law enforcement but not released to the public because he's a juvenile, it is said likely to be a fellow Lee High School student who somehow smuggled a gun onto campus despite the school's metal detectors. The school shooting, though likely stemming from thug lifestyle and an off-campus incident. February 12th, in Kansas City, Missouri. Following a fight during a basketball game at Central Academy of Excellence, 15-year-old Anne Jacqueline Wright was shot and killed as she exited the gym. Police said Wright and the juvenile suspect, who was not named, had been involved in an incident about a week before the shooting. When they came together during the basketball game, a fight broke out. Police escorted the suspect out of the gym following the night, but Wright remained inside. When Wright left later, she was shot and later died at the hospital. Thug life, but not a school shooting. February 8th, Baltimore, Maryland. A 25-year-old man entered the lobby of Frederick Douglass High School and shot a 56-year-old special education assistant and former basketball coach in the torso, leaving him severely wounded. Police arrested Neil Davis and charged him with attempted murder and a firearms violation. He is also charged in a fatal shooting that happened in November 2018. Police said Davis is the brother of a Douglass student who was being disciplined for fighting. Douglass entered the school and asked for the coach, Marks. Marks identified himself, and Davis asked Marks why he was yelling at his little sister. Marks said that he began explaining to Davis about the fight, and that's when just Davis pulled his gun and shot him. Not a school shooting. Interesting, huh? Sorry to hear about that. Good grief, man. Some folks got to think. But it's interesting here. January 31st, Humble, Texas. A 16-year-old was shot while trying to buy marijuana from a 17-year-old. The shooting happened about 6:15 p.m. in the school parking lot. A 16-year-old's injuries were not life-threatening. Police arrested a suspect after he bragged about the shooting on social media. Thug life, not a school shooting. Man, some of these people are pretty damn street stupid, right? Bragging about the shooting on social media. Congratulations. Hi, I want to trap myself. But we'll just keep on going here. January 31st, Memphis, Tennessee. A 14-year-old Manassas high school student suffered minor injuries when he was shot with a pellet gun during a ROTC drill. Police and school officials were tight-lipped about the incident, but it seems likely it was an accidental shooting with an airsoft rifle, not a school shooting. January 30th, Lithonia, Georgia. A person who was running on the Miller Grove High School track for a workout after 7 p.m. was shot when he confronted someone he saw trying to break into his vehicle. The victim was not a student and was not there for the school event, although a basketball game was underway in the school gym on campus. Not a school shooting. January 25th, Mobile, Alabama, around 9 p.m., following a basketball game at W.P. Davis High School. Two people, a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, were shot during an altercation outside the gym. A Mobile County School Board member said he heard from witnesses that there were 2 injured when they were shooting back and forth, not a school shooting. January 7th, Belmont, California. A 17-year-old was shot to death about 11 p.m. in an elementary school parking lot. Police said the suspect and victim knew each other and the shooting was not random, not a school shooting. So what we glean from this is that 11 of 15 school shootings weren't really school shootings by any stretch of the imagination, and 2 others, while technically school shootings, were likely scored settling that occurred on a school campus. So there have been 2 school shootings this year, and CNN is fake news. But we knew that already, right? Absolutely. And this is what I have to say here about Spartacus. Spartacus gets 3 Pinocchios. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, a.k.a. Spartacus, good grief, penned a policy paper that appeared on Medium.com outlining his plan to end gun violence epidemic, aside from the fact it is based on a false premise. There is no gun violence epidemic. The vast majority of homicides committed by guns are black-on-black crimes, and if you're right, the odds of you being killed by someone with a gun is less than 1%. Violent crime is down across the country, and the policy paper is nothing more than a gun grabber gobbledygook rap around Second Amendment destroying criminality. The paper is plain stupid and chock full of strawmen, half-truths, and untruths. In other words, it's typical left-wing nonsense. All you need to know just how much left-wing nonsense is. The New York Times called it the most progressive gun control measure suggested by a candidate seeking the Democratic nomination for president. That means it's 5-alarm fire. Ebola, pandemic, bad nonsense. Booker claimed in his policy paper that nowadays there is more regulation over toy guns than real ones, while medicine, children's toys, and any number of other consumer products are subject to regulation by the federal government. Firearms are exempt. It's obvious Booker never tried to buy a gun. So obvious, in fact, that not even fake news Washington Post fact checker bought what Booker was pushing. Booker's comparison of regulation of toy guns and real guns is spacious. Kessler wrote, "I'm going to nominate the one for understatement of the year." So it sounds like, "Hi, I'm Cory Booker. I'm pro-enslavement." The equally fake news fact checker PolitiFact gives its mostly false ratings. It's just wrong to say that there's more regulation over toy guns than real ones. University of California law professor Eugene Volko told PolitiFact Spartacus is fake news, and given his poll numbers, he is also a fake presidential candidate. However, we agree with him on one thing. There are far too much regulation on children's toys than any number of other consumer products. And speaking of PolitiFact, the fake fact-checking group gave California Senator and Democrat presidential hopeful a pass on bald-faced lie she told during a recent speech to the NAACP. This is funny, it says here. Let's say this loud and clear, without voter suppression. Stacey Abrams would be governor of Georgia. Andrew Gillum is the governor of Florida. Harris said. I'm just laughing. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, we're bringing the clowns, right? We're the circuses, folks. Even though that statement is utter nonsense and there's absolutely no evidence that any type of voter suppression occurred, PolitiFact rated is not the full story. The full story is that Georgia turnout set record 55% of eligible voters voted, about 21% higher than the state's average over the last 30 years. And the voter law experts that claimed in the elections were stolen are nonsense. I've seen no good evidence that the suppressive effects of strict voting and registration laws affected the outcome of the governor's races in Georgia and Florida, Richard Hansen said, an election law expert at University of California, Irving, told PolitiFact. It would be one thing to claim, as some have, that these laws are aimed to suppress the vote and likely suppress some votes. It is quite another to claim that there is a good proof that they affected the outcome. And it's interesting there, right? Yeah. Just kidding, weirdos. We told you a few weeks ago that a vapid but commonly socialist from New York, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC for short, have boldly proclaimed that the Earth will end in 10 to 12 years. If we don't address climate change, only one up by phony Mexican Robert Francis, call me Beto or Roque, who said, we had 10 years max. Of course, both claims are fake news, as we demonstrated at the time. But now, AOC claims she was kidding, and anyone who fact-checked her was Dwight from The Office. She took to Twitter Sunday and tweeted, "This is a technique of the GOP to take dry humor and sarcasm literally and fact-check it. Like the world ending the 12-year thing, you have to have the social intelligence of a sea sponge to think it's literal." But GOP is basically Dwight from The Office, so who knows? I never watched The Office, so I asked my son what this insult could mean. He said Dwight was socially awkward, lacked common sense, but he had a lot of technical knowledge and was into weird stuff like beet farming. So I guess AOC is calling us weird and socially awkward beet farmers for fact-checking her nonsense. See, what's funny about this, if I hear her laugh, I'll take a dump. I find myself taking a dump in the toilet more intriguing and more intelligent than her rhetoric, okay? This is how I look at it. So I'm going to continue on here. But I'm thinking the weirdo AOC's after the street containing a climate scare video is pinned on the top of her page. Climate change is here. We got a deadline, 12 years to left cut emissions in half. Hashtag New Green Deal is our plan for a world and a future worth fighting for. How did we get here? What is at stake? And where are we going? Please watch and share widely. She said something about social intelligence of a sea sponge. She's such a kidder. This week, in a speech broadcast on C-SPAN, AOC claimed that for the first time in human history, carbon cycle levels has exceed 415 parts per million. She went on to say, there's never been seen in human history. The last time we hit 415 parts per million was in the Pleistocene period. Oceans 90 feet higher, bacteria and disease. We have never seen before the roamed the Earth. Humans did not exist. We never seen a planet like this. And a planet like this is exactly what we're going to get. And it's exactly what we're going to inherit from previous generations if we don't act positively now. Bacteria and diseases roaming the Earth sounds scary. She's got to be kidding. But don't ask her, weirdos. White supremacist wants to murder Trump. A Connecticut man has been indicted on 16 counts associated with sending threatening messages against federal judges, mental health facilities, minority groups, and President Donald Trump, according to the Hartford Courant. Authorities believe Gary Joseph Gravel, 51, was behind the bomb threats and anthrax threats sent by mail last September. Gravel, then going by the name Ronald Prigine, was charged with similar crimes in 2010. In a letter addressed to the horrible President Donald Trump and referencing anthrax, Gravel is alleged to have written, "I, Gary Gravel, as a faithful soldier of the AKA, am coming to kill Trump," according to the indictment. The Hartford Courant claims that Gravel is a white supremacist. This must be fake news. I've been able to find any reference to the AKA as a white supremacist group. Not even the Southern Preposterous Lie Center mentions them. That is good. and if he's a white supremacist, why would we have a beef with Trump? After all, Trump's a white supremacist himself, according to the mainstream media. Exactly. It's not until 3 paragraphs from the bottom that we get to Cruz, the story. Before his sentencing in 2013, Gravel's attorney asked the judge for leniency, saying that Gravel had a long history of mental health problems with diagnosed bipolar and a social personality disorder. Ooh, sorry about that. Got the sneeze there. His lawyer said Gravel has several long stays in Connecticut Valley Hospital, a state-run mental health facility. They had me a long history. They had me at long history of mental health problems. Interesting there, right? Ha 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 ha. My oh my oh my. Remember, folks, if a story comes out in the mainstream garbage media, how accurate is it? That's the question. Don't jump the gun. Don't go on a tirade and hear certain buzzwords like Nazis, white supremacy, etc. because they want to give you that knee-jerk reaction. Edward Bernays talked about that in his book Propaganda. Read it. Check it out. It should be online, PDF format. It's just typical. Mind Control 101, my friends. Observe responsibly. Period. This is why the mainstream garbage media want these other alternative sites out. Like we got Facebook coming up. Purge. More purging on people that speak their minds. Even InfoWars. Like them or not. Louis Farrakhan. Many others. They don't want us thinking for ourselves. They want them to contemplate for everyone. I say to hell with them. So, all due respect, my friends. Pay attention. Think before actions. Do your homework and share with others. That's one of my solutions. In multiple ways of getting that done. Alright, just one more here, which I find is pretty damn cool. And it came out today, if I'm correct, right? Yeah. Michael Beharry. It says here, now in effect, Utah law bans warrantless access to information in the cloud. Mike Beharry says here, yesterday a law went into effect that requires police to get a warrant before accessing data stored in the cloud. The new law will not only increase privacy protections in Utah, it will also hinder the federal surveillance state. Representative Craig Hall, Republican from West Valley City, I've been there, sponsored House Bill 57. The new law prohibits law enforcement agencies from accessing electronic information or data transmitted to a remote computing service without a warrant based on probable cause in most situations. In effect, it will prohibit police from warrantlessly accessing information uploaded into the cloud. House Bill HB 57 by a 71-0 vote. The Senate approved the measure 23-0 and went into effect on May 14th. Good for them. I like that. That's awesome. HB 57 does provide some exceptions to the warrant requirement that will allow law enforcement agencies to obtain location information in the event of an emergency involving an imminent risk to an individual of death, serious physical injury, sexual abuse, live stream, sexual exploitation, kidnapping or human trafficking, or if a remote computing service inadvertently discovers information that appears to pertain to the commission of a felony or a misdemeanor involving physical violence, sexual abuse, or dishonesty. It also allows police to access, store, or transmitted data from an electronic device or electronic information or data transmitted by the owner of the electronic information or data to a remote computing service under a judicially recognized exception to the warrant requirement, or in connection with a report forwarded by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children under Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 2558A. The new statute specifically excludes information obtained in a violation of law from judicial proceedings. So right there, that's considered under piracy, okay, about when it comes to human trafficking and all that. So that's right there, like mainly piracy, because that's the federal government. That's one of their duties to stop that, and that's in our Constitution. So look it up, folks. The new statute specifically excludes information obtained in violation of the law from judicial proceedings. HB 7 existing laws are already on the books in Utah, requiring police to get a warrant before accessing location information, stored data, and transmitted data from an electronic device. The current law effectively banned the warrantless use of stingrays. These devices essentially spoof cell phone towers, tricking any device within range into connecting to the stingray instead of the tower, allowing law enforcement to sweep up communications content, as well as locate and track the person in possession of a specific phone or other electronic device. Current law also requires to get a warrant before accessing electronic data from third-party providers. Enactment of HB 57 will further limit the ability of law enforcement agencies to warrantlessly gather electronic information data, impact on federal programs. It has become standard for practice for law enforcement agencies to upload warrantless surveillance data gathered at the state level to a federal fusion centers operated by the Department of Homeland Security and other federal agencies. Fusion centers have served as clearinghouses for all kinds of information shared between federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, including data gathered by surveillance cameras, drones, intercepted cell phones, and email communications, social network spying, as well as ALPRs and other invasive modes of surveillance. The DHS funds and ultimately runs 79 fusion centers across the U.S. The DHS describes Homeland Security intelligence, information, and information fusion as the process of managing the flow of information to support rapid identification of emerging terrorism-related threats requiring intervention by government and private sector authorities. Fusion centers were sold as a tool to combat terrorism, but that is not how they are being used. The ACLU pointed out to a bipartisan congressional report demonstrating the true nature of government fusion centers. They haven't contributed anything meaningful to counterterrorism efforts. Instead, they have largely served as police surveillance and information sharing nodes for law enforcement efforts targeting the frequent subjects of police attention: black and brown people, immigrants, dissidents, and the poor. Fusion centers operate with a broader federal system known as Information Sharing Environment, or ISE. According to his website, the ISE provides analysts, operators, and investigators with the information needed to enhance national security. These analysts, operators, and investigators have missions to collaborate and share information with each other and with private sector partners and our foreign allies. In other words, ISE serves as a conduit for the sharing information gathered without a warrant. Known ISE partners include the Office of Director of National Intelligence, which oversees 17 federal agencies and organizations, including the NSA. ISE utilizes these partnerships to collect and share data on the millions of unwitting people they track. When states limit the data and information law enforcement agencies can collect, it minimizes the amount of information of data that can end up in this federal information sharing pipeline. Legislation such as HB 57 practically hinders the operation and growth of the federal surveillance state. Simply put it, the data, if the data is never gathered in the first place, it can't be shared. In a nutshell, without state or local cooperation, the feds have much more difficult time gathering information. Enactment of HB 57 would strike another blow to the surveillance state and would be the win for privacy. And you know what? That is awesome. The Beehive State did their job, and I like that a lot. I find that amazing. And you know what? Give them a little love, right? Exactly. That's one of the things you gotta do, a little encore, a little homage, and all that good stuff, correct? Absolutely. So, that is it. I'll thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout the social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, and you said something that's interesting and want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to Decorum. I will leave all my footnotes, including my social media sites and email addresses on my speaker page. Okay, folks? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the maniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.